If the title of this video caught your eye, I'm willing to bet there's a reason for that. And this is something that God's been putting on my heart this week as I've been in conversations with women who are reaching the end of their limits. So if that title is something that resonates for you, and if that makes you nervous or apprehensive about listening to what I'm about to say, I just want to reassure you that what I'm going to tell you does not require you to suddenly start revealing yourself to people. I want to remove that concern for you for now. What's become clear to me, and it was something that I already knew, but God has this really nifty way of kind of clarifying things, stuff that we understand, concepts that we grasp, but sometimes He sort of clarifies it in a way that makes it all come together in a nifty little package. And something that He has clarified for me over the last few days is you are only as sick as your secrets. When we are talking about this in the context of spiritual warfare, when we're looking at our lives and trying to remove the influence of the enemy, the first and probably most prominent indicator that there's a problem should be anything that you feel must be hidden, especially if it has to be hidden from the people closest to you. Now, that is not my instruction to start going and telling everybody everything that's in your life. That's not where I'm going with this. I want to make that really clear. But the reason I use that as kind of the litmus test is because God has made it obvious to me that where there are people in our lives who care and are engaged and who express concern for us, and we still feel the need to hide things, that is a place we are trying to hide from God, usually. And wherever we are trying to hide from God, or wherever we believe that we must push something out of the way or compartmentalize it, or I guess try to reassure ourselves that it's not affecting us, anything that we can't address head on with God, or that we feel scared or nervous or upset about the idea of addressing head on, that is a place that the enemy has a grip. Because God, although God is mysterious in the sense that there are things about Him that we can't understand because our minds have limits, our intellects have limits, our bodies have limits, and God doesn't share those limits with us. So there are things about Him that we actually can't understand. That is not the same as a secret. Those things we're told will be revealed to us. We will understand them in eternity. So this is not something that God is hiding or wanting to keep from us. It's a simple, it's because of our corruption and our limitation. We just can't grasp it yet. That is different to a secret. Something that has to be hidden. Something that has to be brushed over. Anything that has to be clouded or represented in a way that is perhaps not entirely accurate, or where we can only talk about part of the picture and not the whole picture. Anywhere that your mind or heart cautions you to hide from people because either your shame or your anger or your sadness or just plain fear, anything that you feel the need to hold on to in that way, I would put to you as coming from the enemy. True freedom spiritually, the freedom of heart, the freedom of mind, the freedom of soul, that comes when our life is illuminated and we find ourselves loved. And that love comes from God. And as long as we're convinced that there are aspects to our character or things that we've done or things that have been done to us that we have to hide or try to gloss over, as long as we believe that, we don't truly believe that God loves us completely, unconditionally, without limits. We don't believe his righteousness has been attributed to us without limits. We don't believe that our sin is separated from us. As long as there are parts of my life that I avoid, then that means that the enemy still has a grip on me in that area. And the danger of that is not only does it mean that I'm listening to deception from the enemy himself, but also it means that I'm not taking any steps to find the truth, that I've committed to the deception. This will demonstrate in our lives with a sense of needing to maintain a facade. So there's certain things about my life I don't talk about. I don't mean this now, but this is how I used to be. Certain things in my life I don't talk about, or if I do talk about them, it's in a very detached way. It's with a lot of reassurance to whoever I'm talking about. There's no depth of analysis. There's no freedom from it. It still has a grip on me. It still makes me fearful or angry or upset. It still makes me feel shame. I still live in that emotional place when I think about it and when I talk about it, so I try to avoid it unless I'm unable to. The only way that God can prove to you that his love has no conditions and no restraints is if you are willing to take those moments, those corners of your life that are dark, either because of what you have done or because of what has been done to you, or both. Only in taking those to God and being honest about them, only then can you see how he will react. This is a truth of people as well. We don't trust people generally until they've proven they can be trusted. And usually the way they prove that is that we give them something that makes us vulnerable. And they show us how they will deal with that. And we start usually with small steps. And the more trustworthy they prove to be, then the more we trust them with. That's a healthy process with corrupted people. That's wise to be careful and thoughtful and stewarding your own heart and the hearts of those around you as much as any resource you have. But where we're talking about darkness, where darkness has entered your life, or where you have brought darkness into your life or someone else's, the desire to hide that is literally protective of the enemy. If I can't go to God and say, this happened, and I did this, or this was done to me, and I'm really angry about it, or I'm really ashamed of myself, or I'm terrified that if people knew that about me, they wouldn't love me anymore. If I can't go to God and let him shine light into those dark corners and those dark closets and those dark rooms in my heart, he cannot prove to me that his love is limitless. I can't find freedom as long as I have to stand in protection over certain aspects of my life. And the mental image to me, like I've said before, I always see my heart as a house. So it has doors and windows and rooms and closets and cupboards and all of that. Wherever there's a part of my house that I don't want anybody else to see, because I'm worried about how they'll react to that, then all of the time that I spend in the rest of the house is always with half a mind that if somebody starts heading in that direction, that I'm going to cut them off and I'm going to stand in the way and I'm going to make sure that they don't get there, right? And we do that with God too. Even though in concept we know, he already knows, he already saw it, he already understands what happened, there's a difference in our minds and hearts when we're honest about it. We somehow think the self-justification or the self-lying, the self-deception, well, that really doesn't bother me anymore. I'm fine. I'm doing fine with it. It's not a problem anymore. If it's not a problem anymore, it wouldn't scare you to talk about it. Because I can say this with experience. There was so much of my life that I was ashamed of, angry about, hurt by, and I didn't want to talk about certain aspects of that for the longest time. Even though I was a very open and candid person, where my life experiences touched on things that were shameful, or things that wounded me so deeply they made me feel insecure and unsafe in the world. I did not want light shining in those corners. And I spent the almost 30 years hiding them from people, hiding the wounds that were driving me, hiding the fear I had, hiding the anger, hiding the ways that I blamed other people and blamed God for what had happened to me. And it wasn't until I went to God with what I describe, and I mean it when I say brutal honesty. I swore at him, I yelled at him, I blamed him for things, I was angry, I was so deeply wounded, and then also deeply ashamed. Some of what I carried was my own conduct, and some of what I carried was what others had done to me. And those things get mixed up in your head. They're difficult to separate out. And that's why they seem scary. But I'm here to tell you they're frightening because the enemy is being protected and held in your heart. And the day that you take the risk on God and go to him with no boundaries, he doesn't have to deal with this in a certain way. He doesn't have to manage this the way you want it to be managed. He doesn't have to prove to you that he's just going to ignore it and it's not a problem. The day you go to him just honestly and you say, here's what really happened. Here's how I really feel about it. Now, what are you going to do about it? That's the day you will learn the depth of God's mercy and his compassion and his love and his grace. Because where the thing that you're fearful of is your own conduct, you're going to find out all he wants you to do is admit that it was wrong and admit that you don't want to do it anymore. Even if it's still in your life, the first step is saying, I hate this. I know this is the enemy. I don't want to give this part of my life to the enemy, but I can't seem to get free of it. And where it's somebody else, where someone has sinned against you, and it's brought shame and fear into your life or anger, that's where you're going to learn about his compassion. That's where you're going to find out that he holds in even greater regard than you do what was done to you. And there's some tough questions there. You have to ask him why he let it happen. You have to ask him where he was when that was going on. You need his answers on that. You won't feel free of this until you get them. But I can guarantee you that as long as you're afraid to talk about it, as long as you're afraid to even spend time in it, just with God, not even with other people, just you and God looking at your life, as long as that's the place you're in, you don't know You don't understand. You're in deception. You do not understand the love and the freedom and the compassion and the mercy that he has for you. You don't get it. Because as soon as you do, as soon as you take those scary things to him and you say, I'm just going to be honest about it, you're going to find that when he says he carries our burdens for us, he means it. You're going to find that he says when he separates your sin from you as far as the east is from the west, he means it. You're going to find when he says, I will take revenge for you, he means it. You are not unprotected. You are not undervalued at all. What you are right now is deceived. And the enemy is convincing you that to bring that to God is going to add pain to your life. The opposite is true. God is the great physician. He's the healer. And he knows how to heal things in a healthy way so they're stronger than they were before. These become the areas of your life where your greatest testimony and the greatest amount of positive, productive testimony that draws people closer to God. This is where that happens. But it doesn't start with group therapy. It doesn't start with a psychologist or a therapist. It doesn't even necessarily start with another person who knows God that you talk to, although he may use people to help you. It starts with going to him and being really, really honest. And if there's anything that I would encourage you, it's that my experience of God was that I went resigned and so angry, just raging angry, and so terrified. But I had reached my limit. I couldn't cope anymore. And so I removed all boundaries from him. I didn't care how he did it. I didn't care what he did with my life. All I wanted was to feel better. And when I went to him that way, despite what people would say was disrespect or a lack of acknowledgement of God's sovereignty or whatever. I mean, there was a lot of things that I said that weren't true, but I really believed them. So I was being honest when I said them, and God understood that. He valued my honesty more than my respect in a human sense. He understood that me coming to him with that was an act of submission. And that's what he valued about it. He wanted me to see right up front that his response to these, the worst things in my life, that his response to those was love and compassion and comfort and a removal of the burden, a relief from it. And let me encourage you with this as well. When you really do give up burdens to God, when you really do come to him with utter honesty, however ugly that is, it doesn't surprise him, it doesn't scare him, it doesn't make him mad. When it's truly how you feel and honestly how you think, he values you approaching him with that. And I can tell you that when you do, not only does he bring relief and comfort and rest, but he brings freedom. Because when you are healed, and sometimes that happens in an eye blink and sometimes it takes some time, But when you're healed by God, your life is different. And those dark corners, they're not dark anymore. I can talk about the ugliest things now that happened, or ugly things that I did. And I'm not buried in shame, and I'm not buried in pain. I understand and have compassion for myself. I remember the emotions of those moments, and sometimes I still experience them when I talk about it. I can cry, or I can be angry because I can remember how I felt. It's an empathy for who I was, but it doesn't have a grip on me anymore. I can just express it. This is where I was. This is what was going on, and this is why. And when I walk away from it, it's with joy. It's with, wow, look how far God's brought me. Look what he healed. Look what he released me from. That's an incredible, incredible gift that no one else on earth can give you. People can give you permission. People can give you forgiveness. People can give you knowledge. But they can't heal your heart. But God can. And he wants to. That's the difference. Christ himself said that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he says, but I come to give life, and life abundant. You cannot have an abundant life when you have secrets. You cannot have an abundant life when there are corners of your heart that you have to hide. You can't have an abundant life when there are barriers between you and God because there's aspects that you just won't talk about, or things that scare you so much or make you so angry that you fear them. Those parts of your life, those are where the enemy is residing, in your heart, in your body, in your mind. And my encouragement to you today is to find the time and space with no other people around and no chance of an interruption, and sit down and start talking to God about them. Here are the things that happened to me. Where were you when those happened to me? Here are the things that I did. How do I get past that? You won't understand God's forgiveness and his love for you until you've given him that honesty. And when you do, that's the gateway for breaking the enemy's grip on your life. So I'll be praying for you this week that you can identify what those areas are, and that you can find the courage and the relief to bring those to God honestly. Not in a pretty cute little package where we acknowledge sin and then we just keep going because it's okay. Talk about it, how it really makes you feel. Talk about what you're really afraid of. Talk about your fear of how God will respond to that, or how other people will respond to it. Let him show you what he can do. And I'm telling you from my own experience, it will be the best thing, the greatest thing you have ever done. And you will wish that you had found the courage or the whatever to do it sooner. You will say, why did I wait? Because it will bring relief, and relief leads to peace, and peace ultimately leads to joy. So if you want a life that doesn't feel like it's restricting you, if you want a mind that doesn't have corners it's not allowed to go to, if you want to be able to look at the worst things in your life and understand what they did but not feel bound to them anymore, the first step is to reveal your secrets to God. You're only as sick as the secrets that you keep. Understand that those are the claws of the enemy gripping you. And only God can take them out. And when he does, it doesn't create pain, it relieves pain. And it doesn't create burden, it releases burden. And it doesn't make fear, it eases fear. I will be praying for you. I hope this helps you. And we're going to start talking about the practical ways that we kick the enemy out. That's the other way that we find real freedom. I'll talk to you soon.